Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. So I hope everyone's had a fantastic week. For today's episode, I've decided to read aloud my paranormal romance monarchy novel called The Eye of Dark Evil on Love by myself, Priya Grewal, and my subtitle on the book cover is A Tale of Love, Romance and Evil in a Faraway Kingdom. So, along with the rest of my self-published books, The Eye of Dark Evil on Love is available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. So let's dig in. The Eye of Dark Evil on Love by myself, Priya Grewal. Chapter 1. Darlena assessed her appearance in the mirror. She had just recently turned 23. She glanced over her brown wavy hair and brown eyes. Suddenly her mother appeared behind her in the mirror. Darlena's mother placed her hands on Darlena's shoulders. "You truly must be the most beautiful young woman in all the lands," her mother Salita praised her. Darlena smiled, looking at her mother's reflection in the mirror. "Thank you, Mum," Darlena responded. "Oh, don't thank me," Salita, her mother, told her. "It's just the truth," Darlena's mother continued. "You have blossomed into a beautiful 23-year-old woman. Your beauty grows every day." Darlena smiled humbly to herself. "Maybe you'll even turn the prince's head tonight. He's just a few years older than you. 27, and oh so handsome," Salita told her daughter. "Mum," Darlena exclaimed, shaking her head humbly, "he can have any girl in the kingdom he wants. Why should he be interested in me?" Salita tightened her grip on her daughter's shoulders warmly. "That's enough of that," Salita exclaimed. "I won't have you running yourself down. You are a beautiful flower, and your future husband will be a very lucky man. Now," Salita continued, "finish getting ready and meet your father and I downstairs so we get to the ball at a good time." "Yes, Mother," Darlena replied as her mother left the room. Darlena looked at her appearance in the mirror again. She picked up her hairbrush and ran it through her hair again. She smiled slightly to herself again at her mother's words about the prince. The prince's name was Prince Tavro. Darlena paused, not letting her mother's words get to her. There were many pretty girls in the lands who would be attending the ball. There wasn't any point getting her hopes up, Darlena thought to herself, despite the prince being handsome and rumoured to be kind and good of character. Darlena lived in a castle with her mother and father. She didn't currently have any siblings yet. Her mother and father were planning to have more children when Darlena was a little older, around 30. Prince Tavro's parents were king and queen of the kingdom because they had discovered this land the residents lived on. The king's name was Racco. He was known to be a pleasant man, and his wife Queen Partava had a great reputation of being a nice person and proud. The king and queen had been searching for new land to live on as the people in the village they lived in were no longer very friendly. They had become greedy and jealous and horrible. So, Racco and Partava had sailed the seas to find a new land to make their home. They had found an elder fairy on their travels, those who had magic. Elder fairies were extremely hard to find. The elder fairy called Merez had agreed to conjure castles up in the land for people to live in. Word had spread of this new land of castles under King Racco and Queen Partava, and hundreds had travelled to the new homeland, as they too no longer liked the residents of their villages, as their neighbours had also turned unpleasant. King Racco and Queen Partava named the land their kingdom Rosania. So, around 60 years later, here was Darlena, living happily in a castle in Rosania with her parents, ready to go to an annual springtime ball held in the king and queen's castle. Darlena had only admired Prince Tavro from afar, with there being an age gap. He had nodded and said hello to her with his parents at functions, but she had been too young to go and socialise with him before this point. Her friends in the land were the males and females born in the same year as herself. They briefly spoke to each other's brothers and sisters, having immense fun with their own age group. Now Darlena was 23. She had started forming curves on her body. Her hips had begun to grow outwards into a figure-8 shape. She was turning from a girl into a woman. Darlena sighed to herself, satisfied with her appearance. She put her hairbrush down and descended down the stairs to meet her mother and father. Chapter 2. Darlena stood with her parents in the ballroom. A harpist with some other band members were playing beautiful music. Darlena said hello to the other guests there who came up to her family to greet her parents and herself. Darlena smiled and said hello to them all. She was wearing a purple dress that was sleeveless. She smiled at her parents, friends, and acquaintances, glad about the colour she had chosen to wear. Darlena surveyed the room. Her eyes found the prince, who was talking to some of his friends on a table standing over them. Suddenly, the prince glanced in Darlena's direction and his eyes settled on her face. Darlena inhaled a sharp intake of breath as Prince Tavro gazed at her. Prince Tavro smiled a lovely, dashing smile at her. Darlena couldn't believe the prince was gazing at her in such a way. Darlena admired the prince's handsome form. He was tall, with black hair and startling green eyes. Prince Tavro lifted his hand and waved at her. Darlena gasped to herself and looked behind her to make sure he wasn't waving at someone behind her. She looked around and the prince was smirking to himself, watching her. She lifted her hand and waved back. Suddenly, a female with red hair tied up in a bun began demanding the prince's attention. Prince Tavro had to break eye contact to respond to the red-haired female. The female was a friend of Tavro's older brother, who was now 31. Prince Tavro's brother's name was Nolak. The vivacious red-haired female with blue eyes' name was Kazilla. Kazilla kept trying to get the prince's attention again via conversation every time he tried to glance back at Darlena. Darlena watched as Prince Nolak approached the pair. He was handsome as well. He had grown his hair a little longer and had it slicked back with gel. Kazilla's eyes brightened as Nolak began talking to the pair. Nolak was friendly enough, Darlena thought to herself, but in a more stern, serious way. He took himself very seriously. Darlena looked away from the scene disappointedly as the pair took up Prince Tavro's attention. Nolak patted his brother Tavro on the back for a moment. A little while later, Darlena had found her own friends at the ball. They had chalices of drink in their hand and were helping themselves to the generous snacks at the table. The table was full of lovely cakes and sweets and desserts. They stood around in a group of 6 talking. "Oh, he's so handsome," Darlena's friend Revoker exclaimed, wearing a pink dress, eating a cake from the table. The 2 males in the group turned to look at Prince Tavro with amusement in their eyes. The name of the males were Sokru and Gorod. Sokru had golden hair slicked back and had deep blue eyes, and Gorod had wavy light brown hair with a pair of hazel eyes. The group had been friends since they were children. "And yourselves look rather gallant too," Mela with her auburn hair and amber eyes said to Sokru and Gorod. The female with ebony hair and dark brown eyes named Lathro started laughing. "Thanks," Gorod replied, and Sokru laughed. Darlena began giggling. "Oops," Revoker responded. "You guys look great too." "Apparently Nolak just got engaged," Sokru gossiped, changing the subject. Revoker's eyes widened. "No way," she exclaimed in surprise. "To whom?" Lathro asked curiously. "The delightful caller," Sokru told them all. "Oh, she is vile," Gorod commented. Darlena looked over at Nolak. There, Caller with her curly yellow hair and pale blue eyes was, standing next to Nolak. The 2 had been friends for a long time. "They're going to announce the engagement later this evening," Sokru told them all. Caller was known for being catty. She was always sarcastic and had a snide remark to make about something. The group of friends avoided her at all costs. "Bet she's over the moon about marrying a prince," Revoker said, somewhat enviously. "Always thought he'd end up with Kazilla," Mela remarked. "Apparently their characters match quite well," Gorod added. The group of 6 turned to look at Caller and Nolak standing next to one another. Caller looked extremely smug about something. "Darlena!" Darlena heard her mother call. She turned around to look at her mum and dad. Her mum was beckoning her towards her. Darlena glanced at her friends. "Be right back," she told them all. Darlena walked over to her parents just as the king and queen approached them to say hello. King Rako clasped Darlena's dad, called Rizal's hand, and Queen Partava and Salita hugged for a moment in greeting. "Oh, it's so good to see you," Queen Partava said to Salita. "Oh, and look at you," Queen Partava exclaimed. Darlena smiled and said hello to the royal pair, bowing her head respectfully. "So nice to see you both again," Darlena said to the king and queen. Oh, such a lovely girl, King Rako said happily. You have grown into such a beauty, Queen Parthava remarked jollily. She turned her head around for a moment. Tavro, she called. Tavro, can you come here, please? Darlena glanced around to see Tavro turn away from two males he was talking to and look at his mother. Tavro glanced at Darlena for a moment, standing next to his parents, nodded his head to his mother, and then made his way towards them all. Darlena inhaled a sharp breath. She could feel her heart beating wildly and watched the prince approach them all. Chapter 3. Hello, Prince Tavro said jovially to Darlena and her parents. Hello, Prince Tavro, Darlena's dad Rizal said enthusiastically. Prince Tavro held out his hand and Rizal shook it. Lovely to see you, Tavro then said, nodding at Darlena's mum Salita. Well, you're growing into a fine young man, Rizal said to Tavro, nodding approvingly in the king and queen's direction. Yes, you have lovely manners, my dear, Salita complimented Tavro. Tavro nodded his head at the compliment and smiled. May I ask Darlena for a dance? Tavro respectfully asked Darlena's parents. Salita glanced at Rizal quickly. Of course, my lad, of course, Rizal responded. The king and queen beamed. Tavro glanced into Darlena's eyes and then held out his hand. He slightly bowed his head as he did it. Darlena felt her heart thud a little. She placed her hand in Tavro's. He glanced back into her eyes and led her to the centre of the ballroom. The king and queen, along with Darlena's parents, beamed happily at the pair. Tavro stopped at the centre of the dance floor. No one else had begun dancing yet. Tavro turned to face Darlena. Do you know the waltz? Tavro asked Darlena. Darlena smiled. Of course, everyone does, Darlena replied. I think you're old enough to dance it now, Tavro told Darlena. Tavro looked at Darlena's face seriously for a moment. Darlena squirmed happily on the inside as his hand fell to her waist and his other hand clasped Darlena's hand and lifted it upwards. He began to move in time to the music. The harpist nodded his head at the pair and the band began playing a lovely tune to waltz to. Suddenly, other couples of dancers began appearing on the dance floor and started waltzing too. Darlena smiled as the parents took to the ballroom floor to dance with their husbands and wives as well. Darlena glanced back at Tavro's face. Your parents hold such wonderful balls, Darlena said, complimenting Prince Tavro's parents. He smiled. I know, he said. I'm glad I got to see you again. Again? Darlena giggled. I like seeing you whenever there is an event, even if it has only been admiring you from a distance up until now, Tavro told Darlena. Darlena blushed deeply. I suppose I've enjoyed watching you from a distance too, Darlena commented shyly. Tavro smiled, flashing his very white teeth to her. I haven't approached you before because you were a few years younger than me. We see 23 as when we become maturer. In my family, I mean, Tavro told Darlena. You wanted to approach me? Darlena asked Tavro, smiling. Yes, I've admired your beauty from a distance up until now. Today you look ravishing, Tavro said admiringly. Darlena glanced shyly at the floor for a moment. And you are very handsome, Darlena responded. I love your eyes, she added. And I love your creamy skin, lovely brown eyes and hair, Tavro commented, briefly touching the ends of her hair and glancing over it and her face. His eyes settled on her mouth for a moment. Darlena began to feel giddy in Tavro's arms. Will you meet with me? Tavro asked Darlena. Meet with you? Darlena asked surprisedly. Yes, will you meet with me tomorrow? I have a favourite apple tree in the park area called the Orchard Grove. It's only a 15-minute walk from your abode. There are not many people around at 1 p.m. in the afternoons. Do you know the place I speak of? Tavro asked Darlena pleadingly, looking into her eyes. Yes, I know it, Darlena responded. I'd love to meet you there tomorrow at 1 p.m., Darlena agreed. Oh, thank you, Tavro responded. He stopped dancing for a moment and kissed Darlena's hand. Darlena felt excited at the prospect of meeting Tavro tomorrow and nearly melted when Tavro kissed her hand. Suddenly there was a clinking of glass. Everyone stopped dancing and Darlena and Tavro turned to face King Rako, trying to get everyone's attention to make a speech. Tavro turned to Darlena. Until tomorrow, he remarked, taking both of Darlena's hands and kissing them both. He hurried away to stand by his father. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending our springtime ball, King Rako said to the guests. There were some claps and cheers from the crowd. The king and queen looked positively radiant at the applause. As usual, we are having a wonderful time with you all, King Rocco told the crowd of guests. But today I do have a special announcement to make. Come here, Nolak, King Rocco said, gesturing towards his son Nolak. Darlena turned to look at Nolak. He was standing amongst his friends and smiled happily, making his way towards his father and mother. I am proud to say my son has got engaged. He is engaged to this wonderful, lovely young woman, one of his oldest friends, Caller. I am happy to say the two have found love with one another. We will send all the invitations for the wedding out shortly, and of course the whole kingdom is invited. Come here, Caller, stand with us, King Rocco announced. Caller nodded her head and curtsied from where she was standing in another huddle of friends. She made her way to where the king was smiling. The guests all applauded. The king put his arms around the pair. Queen Partava raised her glass in the air to make a toast. To Prince Nolak and soon-to-be Princess Caller, Partava toasted. To Prince Nolak and soon-to-be Princess Caller, the guests all joined in with the toast. Darlena raised her glass in the air to toast the new couple. Chapter 4. It was nearing 1 p.m. the next day, and Darlena had told her parents she was going for a walk. She didn't tell them that she was going to meet with Prince Tavro at the apple tree park called the Orchard Grove. She had chosen to wear a green dress for the meeting, which went well with her complexion. Her heart thudded in excitement as she approached the large gate into the Orchard Grove. She walked through and began walking past the apple trees. As Tavro had said, it was empty. Suddenly, as Darlena walked along the path, she saw Tavro appear from behind a tree. She stopped, admiring himself from a distance. He flashed his heart-melting grin to her once again. He beckoned her towards him with his hand. Darlena inhaled a deep breath and began walking towards him. "Hello, Darlena. You look beautiful," Tavro complimented, bowing his head to kiss her on the cheek. He brought his other hand around, which he had been hiding behind his back, and produced a bouquet of beautiful flowers. "I picked some flowers on the way for you," Tavro told Darlena, smiling and handing them to her. "Oh, these are beautiful," Darlena commented, admiring the flowers, taking in their scent. Tavro reached for her hand. "I'm glad you like them," Tavro responded. He took her hand and began walking. "Where are we going?" Darlena asked. "To my favorite tree," Tavro responded. "Oh?" Darlena responded. "Yes, I have a favorite apple tree, the largest of them all. It grows golden apples. I used to love playing there as a child," Tavro told Darlena. "A tree that grows golden apples? I haven't seen such a thing before," Darlena told Tavro. "Oh, you'll love it," Tavro responded. "Here we are," Tavro exclaimed jollily a few moments later. Darlena looked up at the massive golden apple tree in awe. "Wow, that is such a sight," Darlena replied in awe. "Let's sit under it," Tavro said, pulling Darlena towards the tree. Darlena spread out the skirt of her dress and sat. Tavro, looking handsome in a white shirt and black trousers, sat next to her. He had a gold ring on one of his fingers. "So," Darlena said a moment later, "are you excited about your brother Nolak's engagement?" Tavro thought for a moment. "Yes, I am. Of course I'm thinking about following suit," Tavro said seriously. Darlena blushed. She didn't want to respond too much to the comment in case nothing more happened between them both. "It's great to have a royal wedding to look forward to," Darlena responded. "Is Nolak very excited?" Darlena asked Tavro. "Yes, he's very happy. He believes Caller to be his perfect match," Tavro responded. "He told me he feels complete in her company," Tavro told Darlena. "Wow, so he's found love?" Darlena asked. Tavro hesitated for a moment, reaching for Darlena's hand and clasping it in his. "Well, they've been friends for a very long time. When I asked how they went from friends to engaged, he said that as he grew older and they grew closer, he couldn't imagine life without her. So it made sense for them to marry as they enjoy one another's company so much, is what he said," Tavro told her. "Well, it's a very happy time for your family. You may have nieces and nephews not too far into the future," Darlena exclaimed. Tavro smiled happily. "And what about yourself? I see you with your friends sometimes Sokru and Gorod," Tavro asked cheekily. "Any feelings for them? Do you think either would be a good match for you?" Tavro asked her seriously. Darlena smiled to herself. "No, we're just friends. I don't think we're meant to be anything more than that. I do love spending time with my friends as friends, of course," Darlena said. Well, that's good, Tavros said, squeezing her hand lightly for a moment. And what about you? Darlena asked him. It looks like you've got your brother's female friends throwing themselves at you all the time. Tavro laughed. No, they're a little tacky, if you know what I mean, Tavro confided. Oh, you mean they're fake? Darlena asked. My mother hates tacky, she added. Yes, they're a little false, but my brother seems to enjoy their company for some reason, Tavro responded, shrugging his shoulders for a moment. Darlena replied. And Caller, do you like her as a sister-in-law? Tavro started to laugh. Well, she's, enthusiastic, Tavro said, laughing at Caller's personality. As long as my brother is happy, I'm happy, Tavro added. That's good then, Darlena responded. Tavro put his arm around Darlena. Darlena's breath stuck in her throat as he pulled his face closer to hers. She glanced admiringly at his lips. Do your parents know we're meeting? Darlena asked hesitantly. Let's just keep it a secret for now, Tavro said. I don't want to pull attention away from my brother's engagement. But know this, I am serious about you. My intentions are serious. Tavro looked deeply into her eyes. Okay, I'll keep it a secret from my parents too, Darlena whispered back. Tavro leaned in closer and placed his mouth on Darlena's. Darlena melted in his arms as he kissed her. They kissed for nearly half an hour. When Tavro pulled away, he stood up and reached for a golden apple. He gave one to Darlena. Darlena took the apple and bit into it slowly. She said a moment later. These are delicious. Tavro laughed, reaching for another apple himself. He bit into it, holding onto a branch for a moment. Tavro and Darlena spent the entire afternoon together, relaxing and talking and kissing here and there. Darlena settled her head onto Tavro's shoulder as sunset approached. They both felt like they were in their own little land. Chapter 5. A few months later, Darlena had been meeting up in secret with Prince Tavro for a while now, waiting for Prince Nolak's wedding to arrive. The pair had fallen in love meeting up at Prince Tavro's favourite golden apple tree every other day, which was when Prince Tavro could get away from the castle. The pair would sit and kiss and talk for hours until the sun set every other day. Darlena told her parents she was simply meeting up with friends. She felt that Prince Tavro was her perfect match. They could talk for hours and hours, make each other laugh and smile. She felt complete with him in her life and couldn't wait to see him again as soon as they departed from one another. The day of the wedding had finally arrived. Darlena sat with her parents in the wedding ceremony room. They had decorated their palace hall beautifully for the event. Darlena smiled as she saw Revoka approach her. Revoka had settled for an updo this time with a blue sleeveless dress. Darlena also had her hair up and wore a gold-fitted dress. Darlena had placed a white flower in her hair. Revoka took the seat next to Darlena. Revoka's siblings and parents took the seats next to them. Sokru, Gorod, Mela, and Lathro turned around and smiled at the pair. Darlena and Revoka waved at them all. The four had got to the castle early to try and get seats near to the front. Darlena smiled amused at them managing to get into one of the front rows. How have you been? Revoka asked Darlena. Haven't seen you for a while, Revoka asked questioningly. Shh, Darlena whispered. Revoka stared at Darlena, eyes widened. What is it? Revoka asked. Have you been meeting up with someone and using your friends as an excuse? Revoka inquired. Darlena smiled back. She whispered back, yes. Who is it? Revoka asked. I demand to know. I want to know everything. Is it Nolek's friend Fosto? Asked Revoka. Darlena laughed. Of course not, she replied. I don't even know him. Oh, Revoka said. I thought I saw him glance at you at the springtime ball. Darlena giggled, shaking her head. Who then? Revoka asked again imploringly. You'll find out in time, Darlena promised. Revoka carried on looking at Darlena. Fine then, Revoka responded eventually. Keep your secrets. Darlena smiled. She turned her head. The seats had all been filled up as her and Revoka had been talking. I think it's about to start, Revoka whispered to Darlena. I hope Caller falls flat on her face. Revoka, Darlena exclaimed, nudging her lightly. Her friend Revoka certainly made her laugh. The piano began and everyone stood up. First, all turned around to see Prince Nolak looking very handsome in a gold and green garment. He had his hands clasped together in front of him as he walked down the aisle. Prince Tavro stood just a little behind Nolak and looked dashingly handsome in a white garment with gold-thin stripes on it. Darlena's breath hitched as it usually did at Tavro's beauty. She felt like the luckiest girl in the world being his. Tavro's eyes found Darlena as he walked down the aisle beside his brother. Darlena kept her eyes on him and smiled a small smile. Tavro flashed a dazzling grin towards her. She felt a little disappointment when he had to continue walking, breaking eye contact, and be all serious approaching the altar. Prince Nolak nodded at the priest and took his position. Prince Tavro stayed standing a little behind him. The bride and groom's parents were both already sitting in the front row on either side of the congregation. The piano stopped for a moment of silence. Then, a moment later, the pianist began playing a new tune to welcome in the bride. Everyone's head turned to look at the bride. Corla did look stunning, Darlena had to admit to herself. Her hair was arranged beautifully on top of her head and she was beaming. Her brother Tyros was walking her down the aisle, her arm linked with his. They were followed by some excited-looking bridesmaids. Two were little girls, the others teenagers or related to Corla. Darlena watched as Corla approached the altar, her eyes meeting Nolak's. They both beamed at one another. "Wow," whispered Darlena. "Totally hate her," Revoca whispered. Darlena tried not to laugh out loud again. The piano stopped. The bridesmaids took their seats and Tyros, Corla's brother, stood a little behind Corla. The priest began the ceremony. He recited beautiful words about the meaning of marriage and love and companionship. Darlena saw Prince Tavro glance in her direction slyly as the priest spoke about companionship. Darlena couldn't help but smile at him. She felt giddy inside thinking about herself and Prince Tavro getting married. She was so in love with him. The bride and groom finally exchanged rings and the whole congregation stood up and began clapping. The happy newlyweds walked back down the aisle, smiling and waving at everyone as they exited the wedding ceremony. Chapter 6. Around 2 months later, Darlena was laying on the grass under Tavro's favourite golden apple tree. Prince Tavro gazed down at her, holding her hand. Darlena felt as if she was in complete bliss. She found her time with Tavro heavenly. "I think it's time," Tavro said a moment later, playing with Darlena's hand. "Time?" Darlena said confusedly. "Yes, it's time to tell our parents we want to get engaged," Tavro smiled. "Really?" Darlena asked, surprised. "You're ready now?" "Yes," Tavro responded. "It's been a couple of months now since Nolak's wedding to Corla. They've moved into their own castle now. I think the hype is dying down a little. So I won't be stepping on any toes now with getting engaged myself," Tavro told Darlena. Darlena sat up. "Oh, I can't wait to marry you, Tavro," Darlena exclaimed delightedly. Darlena put her hands on Tavro's face and kissed him. "I love you," Tavro told Darlena. "I want you to be my wife and I want to live with you in our own castle." "I love you too," Darlena replied. "I can't wait for you to be my husband and to live together." "Okay," Tavro replied happily. "I'm going to go back to the castle and tell my parents that I want to get engaged to you and marry you. Then we'll organize a trip to your castle to meet with your parents, with my parents, and I'll ask for their blessing to get engaged and marry you. Don't tell them anything yet. We'll arrange coming to yours by the end of the week. I'll make sure of it," Tavro promised Darlena. "Okay, my love," Darlena replied. Tavro kissed Darlena on the mouth and the pair retreated back to their home castles. Chapter 7. It was the end of the week as Tavro had promised, and himself and his parents were all sitting in Darlena's family's palace living room. Darlena sat quietly, excited at the secret surprise that was about to happen. "Well, I have to confess," King Racco began, "we haven't actually just come over for a casual visit." "Oh?" Darlena's father, Rizal, and mother Salita said in unison, glancing at one another for a moment. "No," Queen Parthava added, smiling. "Not a casual visit." Queen Parthava nodded at Prince Tavro. Prince Tavro nodded back humbly and stood up. He pulled a small box out of his pocket and opened it to reveal a wonderful, dazzling silver ring with a gem in the middle. Rizal and Salita both gasped. Prince Tavro got on one knee in front of Darlena and took one of her hands in his. "I'd like to ask you both, Salita and Rizal, for your daughter Darlena's hand in marriage. I love her very much. We have been meeting in secret for a while now and have fallen in love. I want to marry her, have children with her, and live in our own castle together for all of our days," Prince Tavro announced to Salita and Rizal. Salita and Rizal looked at one another astounded. Then they both leapt up and started clapping and cheering. "Of course, my son, of course," Rizal shouted jovially. Tavro smiled and placed the ring on Darlena's finger. Darlena and then Tavro both stood up, feeling ecstatic. Rizal and Salita pulled both Tavro and Darlena into a big hug. "Oh, welcome to the family," Salita said to Tavro. She then kissed Darlena on the cheek. "I'm so happy," Salita cried happily. King Racco and Queen Parthava then hugged both Tavro and Darlena. "As Tavro is your son, Darlena is our daughter," King Racco said, placing his hand on his heart. Both King Racco and Rizal shared a joyous hug, and so did Queen Parthava and Salita. Darlena beamed ecstatically. She couldn't wait for her life with Tavro to begin. "Right," Queen Parthava said glowingly. "Let's start talking about the wedding," Queen Parthava said ecstatically. The six sat down again, talking happily and drinking the tea and cakes that were on the table. Chapter 8. Darlena had had a fabulous couple of months being engaged to Prince Tavro and organising the wedding with both of their parents. It was now winter time, and both of their parents thought a springtime wedding would be nicest at the King and Queen's palace after the new year. Darlena and Tavro would then have their own palace castle conjured up with the magic that the old elder fairy Merez had left with the King and Queen. Darlena had felt like she was walking on clouds. Her and Tavro had both felt giddy meeting up after being engaged. They still met under the tree, and their parents let them spend time together in their palace castles too and in the gardens. Darlena couldn't be happier. Nolak had been extremely nice to her. They had had a family meal with herself, her parents, and Tavro, the King and Queen, and Caller and Nolak shortly after getting engaged. The engagement had been announced to the kingdom, and wedding invitations would be going out to all of the kingdom soon. Darlena's friends couldn't believe it. They all squealed extremely happy for herself and enjoyed meeting Tavro and becoming his friend too. Even Revoca acted over the moon about it. Everything was perfect, Darlena thought to herself. Life couldn't get any better. Darlena smiled happily. Darlena was on her way to meet with Caller. Darlena and her parents, Alita and Rizal, had gone for dinner again at the King and Queen's palace the previous night. Darlena had a good time jovially talking with Tavro, his parents, and Nolak and Caller. Even Caller had been on her best behaviour, not making any snide comments as she usually did. In fact, Caller had been so nice the evening before she had asked Darlena to meet up with her the following day, so they could get to know each other better now they were going to be sisters-in-law. She had asked for Darlena to meet her at the bottom of the hill by Darlena's home castle at 2 p.m. the following day. She said they could walk and talk and get to know one another better. So here Darlena was the following day, waiting for Caller to meet up with herself at 2 p.m. Caller was on time and smiled happily, approaching Darlena. "Oh, Darlena," Caller said happily, so good to meet up by ourselves. Finally get some one-on-one time now we're going to be sisters and you're going to be a princess too." Caller hugged Darlena in greeting. She then linked her arm through Darlena's and began walking and talking. "So," Caller asked, "are you excited about becoming a princess?" "Well, I'm more bothered about marrying Tavro, whether he was prince or not. I really love him," Darlena responded. Caller laughed. "Oh, come on," she jested. "It's still the cherry on the top, though, isn't it?" Darlena laughed forcibly. "I guess so," she responded, not knowing quite what to say. "It's so funny, though," Caller exclaimed to Darlena, "that you and the prince are engaged so suddenly. Wasn't long ago he was besotted with the princess of Hakava. She is quite a beauty. Her name is Verozena. Her family visited the palace and stayed for a week or so. I think both kings and queens were trying to set them up. I think she said she was in love with someone else when the prince said he wanted to marry her. He flew into a rage. Both parents were disappointed that they weren't engaged. He fell head over heels. Can't get over it that quickly, could he? And now he is engaged to you. Maybe he sees it as getting his own back," Caller ranted on. Darlena felt tears sting her eyes and a lump form in her throat. "He was in love with someone else? Who turned him down?" Darlena asked. "Yes," Caller said. "You must remember hearing about the visit." "Oh, yes," Darlena murmured, voice trailing off. She did remember hearing about the king and queen and princess of another land going for a visit a while ago. "You think he's using me to make this Princess Verozena jealous?" Darlena stopped walking and turned to face Caller. Caller looked at her for a moment, pausing. "Oh, who cares?" laughed Caller. "You're going to be a princess. Who cares about the real feelings of the princes? We'll just enjoy everyone knowing our names and knowing who we are. Status, my love, status. Nothing is more important than that." Caller squeezed Darlena's arm. "Come on, let's carry on walking," Caller said jollily. "I have so much to tell you about being a princess." Oh, the dresses I received from the king and queen. They're fabulous. Darlena began walking with Cora, barely hearing anything else she said. The lump in her throat felt like it plummeted down her entire body. She felt destroyed on the inside and foolish. She tried to control her body from tremoring, devastated and angry, thinking she had just been used to make a beautiful princess jealous. Chapter 9. Tavro was in his bedroom trying on a possible wedding outfit. He was looking in the mirror, thinking about the possible garment. It was a blue silky shirt. Tavro looked at himself in the long mirror, assessing his appearance. Suddenly he heard his bedroom door open. He saw Nolak approaching him in the mirror. Tavro turned around. Nolak, Tavro said happily to his brother. Just in time, Tavro said, turning around happily to face the older prince. I was trying this shirt on as a possible wedding outfit option. What do you think? Tavro asked his brother, standing to his full height in the shirt. That looks wonderful, Nolak commented, glancing at the shirt. Come, my brother, sit with me, Nolak said quietly. Nolak sat on the end of Tavro's bed. What's wrong? Tavro asked, furrowing his eyebrows. Nolak looked concerned about something. Just sit, Nolak commanded. Tavro sat next to his brother. I have something to tell you, Nolak said seriously. You're not going to like it, Nolak told Tavro. What is it? Tavro asked, looking at his brother's face. It's Darlena, Nolak said quietly. She was seen kissing Gora a fortnight ago at the Orchard Grove. Tavro looked dismayed at his brother. No, he insisted. That's not possible. It was when we went to the north of the country a fortnight ago to visit some of the northerners, Nolak said, straining his voice. I'm sorry, Nolak pleaded. You know that they're really close friends yourself. They're always all over one another at our events. They're just friends, Tavro insisted. Nolak looked sympathetically at Tavro, saying nothing for a moment. Who claims to have seen her? Tavro demanded to know. Tyros and Fosto, Nolak replied. Why would they lie about it? Nolak responded. Tavro felt his heart plummet. Tyros and Fosto had been his brother's good friends since they were children. Tyros was now his brother-in-law. They had always been friendly to Tavro. He had no reason not to trust them. Tavro felt his heart break. How could this happen? Tavro asked. I loved her so much. She was perfect, Tavro muttered. What am I to do? Tavro asked, fury building inside of him. Tyros and Fosto have asked for their names not to be brought into it. They're afraid of being involved in matters with royalty. Also, you don't want Mum and Dad to think you are foolish picking the wrong girl. It's embarrassing, Nolak explained to Tavro. So I just tell Mum and Dad the engagement is off without telling them why? Tavro asked, trying to keep his voice controlled. That's the best thing to do, Nolak said. I'm sorry, brother, but you don't want the whole family embarrassed by the truth. Tavro felt a tear slide down his face. Oh, my brother, Nolak said sympathetically, putting his arm around his brother. Tavro began to cry into his brother's shoulder. Chapter 10. Darlena walked back to Tavro's castle with Cora as she had originally planned to. The pair had planned to spend some time together once Cora and Darlena had walked around as much as they wanted to. Darlena had remained quiet for the rest of the walk as Cora ranted on about outfits and parties. She didn't know what to say to Tavro when she saw him. She was holding back tears, forcing herself not to cry. Darlena and Cora reached the palace gardens. Aren't you coming in? Cora asked Darlena at the front door of the palace, pulling off a glove. Darlena said quietly. She sat on one of the benches in the front garden of the palace. Can you just tell Tavro to meet me out here, please? Darlena asked, feeling devastated on the inside. Okay, if you're sure, Cora said jovially. She opened the palace castle door and closed it behind her. Darlena sat on the bench crestfallen. She sat alone for a few minutes. Then, all of a sudden, the palace castle door opened. Tavro came out looking sullen. He closed the door behind him. Darlena watched him, not knowing what to say. Tavro looked serious. He walked down the front concrete stairs and stopped in front of Darlena. Darlena looked down at the ground after a moment. Come, Tavro said. Let's walk a little further down. Actually, why not go to our favourite place, the Orchard Grove, Tavro said, grimacing. Tavro fell silent. Darlena walked silently alongside him until they had reached the grove. Tavro led her to his favourite golden apple tree where they usually sat. Tavro walked up to the tree and then turned around. Darlena didn't go closer to him. She simply stared at him. I know, Tavro said, falling sternly silent again. Know what? Darlena asked sullenly. Don't act so innocent. I know you and Gora were here a fortnight ago kissing under our tree, Tavro seethed. What? Darlena asked confusedly. What are you talking about? It's me who should be mad. I've just found out you are trying to use me to make some princess jealous. Our entire relationship has been a sham. Who told you that? Tavro asked, still seething. It doesn't matter. Is it true you're in love with some Princess Verozena and just marrying me to make her jealous? Darlena shouted. Tavro looked taken aback. Princess Verozena? What has she got to do with anything? Tavro asked, looking angry and confused. Everything, Darlena shouted again. You've made our relationship into a sham by kissing Gorod, by being unfaithful. How could you do this to me? I loved you, Tavro nearly shouted, stopping himself suddenly. Darlena stood looking at him shocked. Silent tears had begun to fall straight down her cheeks. And who told you that? Darlena repeated slowly back to himself. You don't need to know, Tavro shouted, pulling his engagement ring off his finger and throwing it aggressively against the tree. I don't know what these stories are that you are making up now, Darlena said slowly, but you used me and made a fool out of me. You led me on when I was nothing to you but a tool to make another princess jealous. Whatever, Tavro said angrily. This marriage and engagement is over, Tavro said aggressively. Fine, Darlena responded quietly. They stopped for a moment, both staring at one another in silence. Slow tears still slid down Darlena's face. When the silence became agonizing, Darlena turned and began to run away. She kept running until she was outside of the gate of the orchard grove and eventually slowed down to a hurried walk. Tavro remained where he was. He leaned his head against the tree, tears falling down his face. Darlena didn't stop until she had reached the palace castle. She went straight into her room, no one disturbing her on the way. She fell onto her bed face down and began sobbing out loud. Chapter 11. Darlena carried on sobbing as the sky began to darken outside. Fortunately, her parents had gone out to visit their friends, so she wasn't disturbed. She didn't have to explain anything to them yet. Darlena didn't know why Tavro was making up stories about her and Gorod. Did he somehow know she was going to bring up finding out about their sham wedding and wanted to act like she was in the wrong instead? She lifted up her head and looked outside of the window. The moon and stars had come out. She leaned her head back on her cushion, her face still wet with tears. My child, Darlena suddenly heard a kind-sounding voice say. Wipe your tears away, the voice instructed. We have matters to discuss. Darlena lifted her head off the pillow, lifting her body up suddenly. Huh? She said confusedly. May I appear? The kind female voice in the air asked. Yes, Darlena stuttered. Suddenly there was a silver flash of light. A beautiful woman in a silver dress with beautiful white hair tied slickly back in a bun smiled kindly at her. She was floating an inch off the floor. Who are you? Darlena asked, dismayed. I am Merez, the woman said. I take it you've heard of me? Merez smiled gently. She stopped floating and planted her feet on the floor. Merez? Darlena exclaimed. She wiped the tears from her face and stood up. How can this be? Darlena asked. Well, I trust you've enjoyed your life here in Rosania up to now, at least in your palace castle, Merez questioned Darlena. Of course, Darlena replied. Merez sat on Darlena's bed. Darlena sat down beside her. I know all about you. The magic you gave to King Rako and Queen Partava, conjuring up our marvelous homes, Darlena said excitedly. Thank you, Darlena added. They were good people, and I knew some citizens of the world needed new homes, with their neighbours becoming horrid, Merez told Darlena. Now, Merez said again kindly, looking at Darlena's face. Merez brushed Darlena's hair away gently from her forehead. I like to keep an eye on the residents here in case anyone is ever in any trouble. So, I cast a spell to receive a magical notification if anyone in this land was ever in trouble and needed help, Merez told Darlena. A short while ago, I was lounging on my sofa and received a notification. I magically looked in and found you here crying, my dear. I looked into the argument that you and Tavro had. How awful, Merez told Darlena, looking distressed. Merez put her arm around Darlena. But not all is what it seems, my dear. Evil is at work here, Merez told Darlena. What do you mean? Darlena asked, surprised at the words of the elder fairy. Evil is sabotaging your relationship with Tavro, and more, Merez cried. Darlena stared dumbstruck at the fairy. Let me show you, Merez said to Darlena, looking grievous. Merez produced a wand and tapped the air in front of Darlena. Darlena watched as the air in front of her rippled and turned into a scene containing two people. Chapter 12. Caller sat on Nolak's lap on a chair in a room in their palace. Well done, my love, Nolak said happily, kissing Caller. You've done very well, Nolak remarked. She fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, Caller laughed, enjoying the praise. So did Tavro. Nolak and Caller laughed together. Is the wedding definitely off? Caller asked Nolak. Yep, Nolak said, happily kissing Caller again. He stormed into the palace castle, saying the engagement and wedding are both off, Nolak told Caller, and then went straight to his room, not saying another word. Suddenly the doors to the room opened, and Tyros, Foster, Revoker, and Kazilla walked in. Another friend of Nolak's called Darid also joined them. Darid had straight brown hair and blue eyes. Darid was grinning a wide grin. Is it done? He asked, still grinning. Of course, Caller responded, still sitting on Nolak's lap. The wedding is off, she cheered. The group all began cheering. Revoker began jumping up and down in joy. Kazilla started cackling. Tyros, Foster, and Darid took a seat in the room, all grinning and laughing. Ooh, I'm so happy, Revoker cheered. Darlena, thinking she was going to be a princess, she added, looking cold. Nolak laughed. You traitor, you, he cackled. Not as bad as you, Revoker shot back. Waiting to kill off your whole family, Revoker cackled again. Nolak smiled darkly. All were silent for a moment. Darid looked from Revoker to Nolak, grinning again. Nolak continued to smile darkly. He removed Caller from his lap and stood her up. He got off his chair and fetched a bottle from a shelf and poured himself a drink. He got some other glasses out for the others to help themselves. He gestured at the glasses and said, Help yourselves. The males all went to pour themselves a drink. So, Casilla said as the males poured themselves the drink. On to our killing plans. When shall we do it? Have you decided? Casilla asked, eyes brightening. Caller sat on another chair with her legs over the armchair. She looked at Nolak, smiling. Tell them, my love, she said. Nolak waited for everyone to sit down again. We all go to visit some of my parents' friends in the south around February every year. This year, Caller is joining us, and I've already asked if Tyros could come along too, Nolak told them all, evilly happy. Our carriage moves around by itself magically, as you know, Nolak told them all. There's space for 6 of us in there, he continued, which is all we need. So it's 1-on-1, of course, Nolak added. Us 3 will have knives hidden under our clothing, Nolak told them all. The cue to kill is going to be when I say, great to be travelling again this year to visit the south, Nolak told them all. And then, Caller continued, we will stab each one until all 3 of them are dead, Nolak finished. Silence filled the air. Revoker smiled. The males, Kazilla and Revoker, all glanced at one another, a smile spreading across each one's face. The story will be that the carriage started going haywire, going off track and crashed into the trees in a forest, killing my mother, father, and Tavro, Nolak instructed them all. We managed to survive with only a few cuts on our faces, which we will do to ourselves with a smaller knife before returning, Nolak told them all. And then, Caller told them all, Nolak will be king, putting us all on top. The most powerful, famed friends and names in all the land. Of course, Nolak smiled. I carry my friends with me, always. The room split into cheers. Revoker stopped laughing for a moment. What about Darlena? She asked venomously. What about her? Nolak asked, looking slightly irritated. Do you think she will suspect anything? Revoker asked the room. Caller laughed. Of course not. It will be confusing for her reaction to the death, because she will be all bitter and twisted about mine and Nolak's made-up story about Tavro being in love with some princess from somewhere, Caller laughed. And Tavro will die thinking that Darlena betrayed him by kissing your friend Gorod, Kazilla chimed in. The room burst into evil laughter again. The scene before Darlena erupted into a shower of magic. Darlena covered her mouth with her hand. She turned to look at Merez and said, I can't believe it. This evil. She trailed off, sitting in shocked silence, looking into Merez's eyes in disbelief. Chapter 13. Darlena was still sitting in shocked silence. Looks like sabotage towards couples in love always means evil murderer killers, Merez told Darlena. Right, Merez said, standing up. Get yourself up, my dear. I'm going to transport us both magically to the king and queen and Tavro. I will tell them what we have discovered and the sabotage done by them to you and Tavro. The killers are still together celebrating in Nolak and Caller's castle palace. I will transport us all into a secret passageway I've conjured up so the king and queen and Tavro can all look in and hear it for themselves. Take my hand, dear, Merez ordered Darlena. Darlena stood up and held the hand of Merez. Darlena felt a gust of air, and next Darlena and the elder fairy were standing in the throne room of King Rako and Queen Partava. Tavro stood before his parents, both of them looking grave as the teary-eyed Tavro spoke to them. Merez, King Rako said all of a sudden, glancing up towards Darlina and the elder fairy. Stop crying, Tavro, Merez ordered, stomping forwards furiously. Nolak and Corla made up a bunch of rubbish to both you and Darlina. 2 nonsensical stories to break the 2 of you up and stop the wedding. What? Tavro spluttered. What? Roared King Rako. Queen Partava held her hand to her heart in shock. Darlina ran up to Tavro. It's true, she told him. Tavro opened his arms. Darlina fell into them. I'm so sorry, Tavro apologized, putting his arms around Darlina. So am I, responded Darlina. So sorry. She burrowed her face into his shoulder and then looked into his eyes seriously. There's more, she told him, turning to face Merez. It gets even more worse than sabotage, Merez told the family. Nolak and Corla with their friends are planning to kill both of you and Tavro when you take a trip in the carriage to the south in February. They're going to come back and claim that the carriage went haywire and crashed into the forest, killing you 3. They plan to stab all 3 of you to death and then use a small knife to put fake cuts onto their faces, pretending they were in the accident. Then Nolak plans to become king with his friends being on top and famous and known in the land. King Rako and Queen Partava were shocked into silence. Tavro held on to Darlina. I've conjured up a secret passageway so we can go and spy on them now. I'll put eye slots into the wall so you can watch and hear it for yourselves. All 3 of you, Merez ordered. Darlina squeezed Tavro's hand. Revoker's one of them too, she told him. On the count of 3, I'll transport us. Everyone completely silent now. I'll nod when I've put the eye slots in the wall up for you all. 1, 2, 3, Merez ordered. Darlina felt the gust of air again, and next she was in a dark corridor, a dark blue wall facing them all. Merez held her finger to her lips to indicate silence. She blinked once and then nodded her head to indicate that the eye slots were in the wall. She cast a spell so that they could all hear their voices clearly too. Darlina stood by Tavro, not bearing to watch them all again. The king, queen, and Tavro all looked through the eye slots in the wall at the same time. Darlina shuddered, hearing their voices again. The king, the queen, and Tavro are all going to be dead in 2 months, Darlina heard Revoker celebrate and cackle again. She then heard a male voice toast. To Nolak and Corla, the future king and queen, our heroes killing King Rako, Queen Partava, and young Tavro, the male voice cheered. Darlina recognized the voice of Darid. King Rako turned to Merez and whispered, I've heard enough. Can you transport us in there with a protective shield around ourselves to arrest them all? Merez nodded. A split second later, and the 5 appeared in the middle of the room in a protective bubble conjured around them by Merez. The group looked up in disbelief. Kazilla and Revoker started screaming. Tyros and Fausto and Darid tried to leave the room hurriedly a moment later. Corla's eyes were wide in fear, and Nolak looked up at them all in disbelief. Merez waved her hand, and all 7 were forced magically onto the floor, whole bodies forced into a laying position with handcuffs and rope binding all of their hands behind their necks. King Rako kicked Nolak in the face. You devil, Rako roared at him. You will all be the ones to die, Rako told them all. The rest of them still stood in horrified silence. Queen Partava's hand covered her mouth in shock. Tavro gripped onto Darlina. Throw them into our dungeons, King Rako told Merez. Merez nodded, and the 7 disappeared, teleported into the dungeons of Rysania. Tavro put his arm around Darlina and kissed her on the top of her head. Darlina held on to Tavro tightly. Chapter 14. Darlina stood at the front of the crowd who had come to the execution grounds to witness the execution of the 7 evil traitors. She had spent the week helping Tavro come to terms with the shocking betrayal of his brother. He went from feeling shock to fury. King Rako had remained strong, telling the kingdom all what had happened. He had told the whole kingdom that these villainous traitors would be put to death. The kingdom was reeling from the shock of it all. They could not believe the king and queen's son had planned their own and his younger brother Tavro's murder. Gorad had volunteered himself as an executioner, not liking the fact that Nolak and Corla had thrown his own name into their evil sabotaging. King Rako had agreed. The 7 would be executed by beheading with an axe. King Rako had announced he would execute his own son, having brought the evil devil, as he was now called, into the world. Partava supported the executions. Merez had decided to stay until all was settled. She too stood to watch the execution. Darlina's parents, Lita and Rizal, stood by Darlina. Selita held on to Darlina's hand. Tavra stood next to Darlina, his arm around her shoulders. Sakru, Mela, and Lathro all stood at the front of the crowd, shocked at the revelation of Revoker being unmasked as a traitorous murderer. The people of the kingdom all felt passionately that the seven should all be executed too. King Racco stood on the stage. The seven were led out onto the stage. "Kneel, you evil traitors," King Racco roared before the crowd. The crowd started jeering at the seven. "Evil will not be allowed to endure in the kingdom of Rosania," King Racco announced to the crowd. Queen Partava stood at the front of the crowd, watching her husband, disgusted by the face of Nolak. "The only thing to do with this evil is to destroy it. That includes my own traitorous son, the former Prince Nolak," King Racco roared to the crowd. "Any last words?" King Racco said to the seven. Revoker glanced at Darlina and then glanced away. Caller said nothing. Tyros, Foster, and Darrod stared straight ahead. Kazilla started screaming for her mother. All the other six's parents stood in the crowd, looking at their evil former children, as they called them now. They watched them in disgusted silence. King Racco nodded to Gorod. "Heads down," King Racco ordered. The six placed their heads on the floor. Kazilla was whimpering. Gorod lifted the axe and beheaded the six one after the other. The air was filled with silence. The crowd erupted into applause. King Racco lifted up his hand after a few moments for silence. The crowd fell silent again. "Let evil perish with you all," King Racco said to Nolak. Nolak started screaming, refusing to put his head down. "No!" Nolak screamed. King Racco forced Nolak's head down with his foot. He lifted his axe in the air and brought it down, severing Nolak's head from his body. Nolak's head rolled off the stage. Cheers erupted from the crowd. "Evil is dead," King Racco roared to the crowd, "and no one will ever try to sabotage my beloved son Tavro's marriage to the wonderful Darlina again." King Racco gestured for Tavro, Darlina, Queen Partava, and Rizal and Selita to join him on stage. Gorod had begun kicking the heads of the six around. The crowd continued to clap. King Racco asked for Merez to join them on stage. Merez bowed her head and joined the family on stage. King Racco held out his hand to Merez. "Our saviour, thank you, Merez, on behalf of us all and the entire kingdom." The crowd all bowed their heads along with the family on stage, honouring Merez for her rescue. Chapter 15. Darlina smiled, feeling joy. She held a bouquet of flowers in her hand. She had felt relieved and happy again the month leading up to the wedding at the threat of evil being destroyed. Tavro had become himself again, grateful to Merez for discovering the plot to kill himself and his parents. The king and queen had helped Tavro and Darlina move on, joyously celebrating their engagement again along with Darlina's parents, Rizal and Selita. Tavro had started laughing as he requested Merez to show Darlina the Princess Verozena. Merez had showed Darlina the scene of their royal visit and saw Verozena pulling her younger brother's hair. Tavro had found entertaining the pair a nightmare. Darlina laughed, appreciative of the prince for getting rid of any insecurities that may have lurked as a result of the sabotage. Darlina took a deep breath. The piano began to play a beautiful melody. She linked her arm in her father Rizal's arm as he led her down the aisle. Prince Tavro turned around and beamed at her, looking devastatingly handsome in a silky blue shirt. King Racco and Queen Partava beamed at Darlina. Darlina's mother Selita turned around and smiled. Merez also beamed from the front of the congregation. The guests all stood up looking joyous and happy after all the young couple had been through together. Evil was truly dead. Darlina reached Tavro. Rizal kissed Darlina on her forehead and handed her over to Tavro. He joined his wife Selita, clasping her hand and taking the seat beside her. Tavro had asked Gorod to be his best man. Gorod passed the rings to Tavro. Tavro placed the ring on Darlina's finger. Darlina then placed the second ring onto Tavro's finger. She looked up into his eyes. "I love you," Tavro told her. "I love you too," Darlina said. "On this day and forever." "On this day and forever," Tavro agreed. The two gazed into each other's eyes, excited of the promise of a happy, loving future together. The end. Okay, everyone. So thank you so much to anyone who listens to my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. And thank you to anyone who's tuned in to this episode. So that's my book, The Eye of Dark Evil on Love, by myself, Priya Grewal, available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle, published with Amazon Kindle Direct Publisher. Okay, everyone, so that concludes season 3, episode 1 of my podcast. I hope everyone has a lovely week. Until next time, have a fabulous week, everyone. Bye.